how can I live my life in such a way, and how can we help our team members in our organization, live their lives in such a way that, they can show up and be authentic at work so they can be their best self. And so then when they go home, they can also, be their best self at home and be present. It's really about being present where you're at.
Hey everyone, it's Lynn Durham, and you're listening to Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work is on a mission to equip senior leaders with tools they need to be a true quantum leader and actually understand what that means. Improve employee engagement, retain top talent, and transform your workplace culture to have less drama and stress. So let's start making magic. Hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Create Magic at Work. Today, I am excited to bring Todd Wuestenberg to the show. Let me tell you about Todd. Todd is the Chief Culture Officer at Haverkamp Group, a real estate company based in Ames, Iowa. With over 20 years at Haverkamp, Todd is dedicated to creating an environment where employees feel valued and motivated. His leadership has helped Haverkamp earn recognition as a Des Moines Register top workplace for 3 consecutive years. Congratulations. That's good. Todd is passionate about leadership development and aligning company values with those of its people. And we're going to get into that today because I'm very curious to talk to somebody that's like doing the work today, building culture. Todd has launched key programs, including a company-wide recognition initiative and an annual culture survey, which have driven meaningful improvements across the organization. Active in the broader culture community, Todd serves on the Cultural Excellence Network Steering Committee and holds an organizational culture leadership certificate from CultureCon. He's also appeared on several podcasts discussing workplace culture. Outside of work, Todd enjoys life in rural Iowa with his wife, Kendra, their 4 children, and time spent outdoors. He believes service starts with caring for people and is committed to helping others thrive. Love that. Which is why you are on Create Magic at Work. Todd, welcome to the show.
Amy, I am so excited to be a guest on your show, and I'm looking forward to our time with one another. So yeah, let's create some workplace magic.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So one of the things we were even talking about before we started recording was like talking about the real stuff with culture. And I just want to dive in for what's coming up for me right now. I have heard in spaces on the coaching and consulting side, which I can't believe that's the side I'm on compared to the corporate side. I'm going on 5 years, that culture has become like a bad word, or that companies aren't really responding to that anymore. Is there any truth to that you've heard? And on that note, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent all of a sudden, but like on that note, tell us what culture means for you. Because I feel like this is something that's kicked around a lot in corporate and companies, but nobody really like gets what they're talking about.
Yeah. First of all, culture is very, very complex, and it's something that's also very dynamic. And it's really hard to always give it a definition. But I'm going to go back to the root word. The Latin root word for culture is cultus, which means to care for. So when we talk about culture in the workplace, it means that we're caring for something. Okay, we're caring for the people, we're caring for the processes, we're caring, for the business. We're being good stewards. So when I think about culture, I think about stewardship. I think about caring for something. I'm from an agriculture state. We got agriculture. What are we doing? We're caring for the land. We're caring for the livestock. So again, it's this idea of caring for something. So I think culture is very important from an organizational standpoint, and it's not dead. In fact, every time I go to a conference and I sit in some kind of session that has a culture vibe to it, there are so many men and women in that room with pen and paper in hand, taking notes. So I think there are people who are really, really caring about it, because what they understand is I look at it this way. Again, going back to my agriculture background, my Midwest roots, your business strategy is the seed and your culture is the soil. So I'm going to go to a parable that is famous in in the Bible, and that's the parable of the sower. And what that sower does is the seed's always the same. The variable is the soil in that story. So the same is true in business, where I believe if you can change the culture, that soil, and you can make it so that it's a good soil, you're going to have success with your business strategy. But if you don't focus on the culture, you could find yourself having your business strategy with no root, or you're going to find a business strategy that's going to get choked out when the pressures come. So that's where I get really passionate about culture, because I see it as being that good soil that's going to produce a bountiful crop, if you will, to your business strategy.
What would you say to somebody that is working in their company and they feel like their culture is not the best, even though they've tried? Maybe they have some established values and an established mission that they've tried to sort of ripple out to the organization, but somehow it feels like there's a disconnect between let's say the senior leadership and the other team members. So if somebody's like, yeah, I feel like I'm really rooted in what I want this company to be, but I don't feel like everybody out there in the field is, what are some things that they can do to maybe course correct that?
I do believe that culture is really impacted and influenced by leadership down, but no question, it also has an upward movement to it. So individuals definitely can impact the culture around them. So I would like to, that's pretty complex. There's so many, variables in that scenario that you just shared there, Amy. My first encouragement would be, a larger organizational culture is really made up of lots of mini cultures. So maybe where that person is at, that they can really, instead of thinking about the big picture, well, let's talk about the team I'm on, or the people I'm connected with. How can we together create a good culture in our department or in our office location, wherever that is, whatever that team looks like. And then, perhaps that can become influential to the next team, and maybe that can bubble up. But, at least let's focus on that mini culture within the team or the department that person is on. And that's where I would start.
I love that, because that empowers the person. And it also, what I'm finding a lot with clients as well is with the whole team. I've seen it when we're working with private clients, executive coaching in session, inevitably what bubbles up is permission at some point or another, depending on, we talk about all sorts of different things in session, but one of these themes does bubble up is the realization that I don't have to have permission from someone to be the leader I want to be. And the realization that maybe I've been waiting around for somebody to say, hey, it's okay to do this, instead of just doing it. And when you share that story of, we'll start with your team, start with the ripple effect that you want to make right here. That reminds me of that. It's like giving everybody listening permission to just go ahead. Like, who are you waiting for? And you mentioned that you don't bring this hero's perspective to culture, which is one of the reasons why I loved bringing you on as a guest, and that ordinary people can create extraordinary impact. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. I'm gonna lean into the word that you just used a few moments ago, because it's a word that we talk about and we use a lot here. That is empowerment. We want to empower the individuals in our workplace. We don't want to micromanage. We want to make sure that people can show up as the best version of themselves. That's a little bit my coaching, coming out in me. I started off as a teacher and a coach as a profession, but yeah, we want to empower people to come in and be the best version of themselves. And so as a result, really, the culture isn't one person leading it. It's not, our CEO or our owner. It's really everybody coming together and having the impact and the influence on the culture. So it's definitely that team, or it's a we thing. It's not a me thing. It's everybody having impact, influence on the culture.
So for those leaders, senior leaders that gather in a room and talk about their mission and their values, and then expect it to ripple out because that conversation happened in that room and they put it on a poster, what would your tip or advice be to maybe make that a little better?
Well, one of the things I've heard said and we say is that values are not to be laminated, they're to be lived out. And so to the leadership, it's like you have to be the role model. Part of being a leader is the pace setter. So for us, we have 5 core values, and those are service and hard work, accountability, results driven, and integrity. And so it really starts with the leaders modeling that and demonstrating that and making sure that when they see it throughout the organization, they recognize it, and not just with a good job. It's no, I saw you when you did this, and when you did this, this caused this to happen. So it's being really specific with that recognition. But it starts with, we have to live it out as leaders and seeing it not as fluff, but seeing it as that values really do drive our decision making. And there was an article in Harvard Business Review just a month ago or so talking about those leaders and those organizations that have well-defined values are ultimately better decision makers. And they go into some, statistics with that. So that's kind of the place we come from, is that we make much of values because we know it's the lens in which you look through as you think and as you speak and as you act. And eventually those become your behaviors and your reputation as an organization.
What I'm curious about is your thoughts, having said that, on making that spark and that connection with an individual on the team that didn't craft those values themselves. So I've seen it go left is the reason why I'm asking this, is I've seen leaders go into a situation where they're maybe visiting some team members that are geographically spread out. And the first thing they do is they walk in to the team and they start covering what's on the poster. And it's like, you have no idea what you just walked into. Maybe they had the craziest day right now with clients or customers, or maybe a project just went left. And because you're the senior leader, you're expecting everyone to pause and just listen to you, like cover what you creatively came up with in the boardroom when you flew out. And so I've witnessed that disconnect, and then the person just shakes their head. Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you. And then, the senior leader leaves, and it's like, okay, back to the chaos I was working through and trying to fix, or whatever. So how can we close that gap if somebody's in that space or not having that self-awareness? I mean, is that even possible?
I think it is possible, but it starts with being connected with that individual. You have to build a relationship. And I know as a senior leader, you may not always have that opportunity to build, obviously a relationship with everybody in your organization, but there's this idea of trying to build a connection with that individual. And yeah, you do have to read the room. You do have to have that self-awareness and say, and just to pause and say, I need to connect with this person. I need to see what's going on in this person's world and try to bridge a gap. And so I need to show that compassion. And compassion is, yes, it's having empathy, but it's also being able to take action. And as a leader, you're in a position to take action. So yeah, compassion is empathy and action. So read the room, maybe pause on whatever your agenda was and pick maybe a different day to talk about whatever that is, and be in the moment and help that person be real and be real with that person. Again, this is your opportunity as a leader to demonstrate and be that pace setter for that individual.
Love it. I love that. One of the skills in spiritual intelligence is skill 19. It's one of the capstone skills. It's making wise and compassionate decisions. And one of the key differentiators in being a wise and compassionate leader is that you do not take on the suffering of others, but you lead from a compassionate space. So I'm thinking of, the example you and I were just talking about, where you lead from a place of alleviating other sufferings by being able to compassionately see what's going on. How can I alleviate the suffering here of this individual? Maybe make some systemic decisions or whatever that looks like But if you're just sort of robotic, kind of going through your agenda, like you said, well, then we're really missing the mark on what culture really means and what those values really mean that you have hanging on your wall. So on that note, I'd like to shift a little bit because you also do some really great work at Haverkamp around company-wide recognition initiatives. So I thought it would be really cool to talk about that and sort of spark some creativity with everyone listening about what they could do within their teams and their organizations surrounding recognition and making a difference. So can you share kind of a little bit about what you do there?
I've been sitting in this seat as the chief culture officer going on 4 years now. Most of my tenure was as a chief operations officer. And so I think having that background of operations was really very helpful to, transitioning into this role. And one of the first things as we talked as a leadership team is we wanted to find a better way of recognizing the effort specifically with our maintenance technicians. So again, we're a real estate company, multifamily housing, and we were trying to find a way to recognize our maintenance technicians who are on call in the evenings or on weekends or going above and beyond. And we didn't want to just put, some extra money in the paycheck and, it just gets hidden and lost there. So we wanted to do something extra. So I needed and wanted to look for ways that we could do that. So I vetted lots of different third-party options and landed with one specific third-party option that we could partner with. And the reason we partnered with them is because, first of all, they made it real easy for us to be able to give out public recognition. So through this platform, we can give acknowledgement to, like I said, it started with our maintenance technicians, then it's broadened to our entire team, where we can, give out very meaningful and timely recognition. And we always tie it to a core value. So somebody cannot recognize a peer, and it is peer-to-peer. It's not just, supervisor to a direct report. It's peer-to-peer. And actually, that's where we believe the magic really happens, is that peer-to-peer recognition. We also have like a farm management division. So if we have somebody in our farm management division recognizing somebody on the accounting team for their help, that's beautiful right there, because it's that peer-to-peer, department to department. But like I was saying, it has to be tied to a core value. So, there's a hashtag hard work. So I have to put into this, and now that it's evolved, it uses AI, and it does score you on how good of recognition that you're giving. Is it timely? How did it impact the organization? And I love it, because now all of a sudden, as we go through and we scroll, looking at all the different recognition that's given out across the company, you're seeing very specific ways of where people are showing up. And that's just really fun to see that. And then people celebrate that too, oh, wow, that's really fun. I saw that you did this, and I'm going to celebrate with you on that.
Hey everyone, Amy here. Let's talk about work realities for a second. Whether you're dealing with a tough boss, struggling with team miscommunication, feeling stuck in decision-making, let's be real, work drama exists and it's exhausting, but it doesn't have to be this way. At Create Magic at Work, we help leaders like you cut through the chaos, build next-level communication skills, and make better, faster decisions without the stress spiral. Whether you're leading a team or just trying to keep your sanity at work, we've got your back. We coach executives and teams like yours to develop interpersonal savvy, drive engagement, and bring your vision and purpose to life, so work actually feels energizing again. Imagine that. More engagement, more productivity, less drama. Our executive coaching team has been in your shoes. We've led teams, navigated workplace challenges, and know what it takes to help you succeed and achieve your goals. Real experience, real talk, and real results. If you're thinking, yes, Amy, we need this at my work, then let's talk. Click the link in the show notes and let us help you and your teams become a high-performing, engaged, and productive force of clarity and calm. I'll see you in the Zoom room. Let's throw the stress and drama out the window. Click on the link in the show notes. Love the idea that it's peer-to-peer and also from one department to another. That's building that relational currency, if you will. And that is one of the biggest things lately that I also see in our executive coaching engagements is companies wanting to strengthen their teams with this like relational currency, because everyone's having to work with someone. So it's not hierarchical anymore. So you have to learn how to connect with someone, how to get things done, even though you're not the boss, saying the. And actually, I don't think this has ever been mentioned on Create Magic at Work before, although I'm hoping our community is already doing this in some way, shape, or form. But that peer-to-peer recognition is bigger when it's from one department to another. That's the bridge building. That's the wise and effective change agent. That's the building from one seemingly world to another world that might not seem like they're connected. Then all of a sudden they're working together at a much more productive, profitable level. So I like the way that unlocked all of these things for me when you shared that. So thanks for sharing that one. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was your culture survey. How did you come up with that? What's behind that? What are some of the measurements you get from a culture survey? Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So again, full transparency here, we actually violated one of our core values for a season. That core value was being results driven. And when we talk about being results driven, we say we like to keep score, we like to win. And we always felt that we had good culture, but we never had any data to support that. So again, 4 years ago, I said, okay, we got to change this. We got to start asking our employees, do they like working here? And what things do they like about it? And what areas do we need to, improve upon? Because one of the things we know is, I said it earlier, culture is dynamic. It is not static. So we started looking for partners again to help us do a culture survey. And we found a partner 2 years ago. We worked with them for 2 years, and it was, for that very first experience, we got, good data. We started to get a baseline established, but then last year we actually switched to a different third party. And the reason we want to use a third party is because we want to have that, make sure that there's, the anonymous factor, that it's coming from somebody outside of the organization. So that way people feel like, okay, I can really be honest and authentic with my feedback here. And so we, I found a group out of Chicago called, I've got their report right here, Human Synergistics. Okay, I know you can't see that, but Human Synergistics, they bring a scientific approach to culture survey. And just bottom line, you have to measure it, but it's not just enough to measure it, you have to shape it. And one of the reasons we switched to using this third-party Human Synergistics is because they have what they call levers of change. Okay, if this is where your culture is at, here are some different actionable items that you should consider doing to push or pull on these levers to make it even better. And so it's the classic, better data in, better data out. And I was just talking to a coworker. I mean, this takes time, and we're very upfront with all of our team members. Like, you need to set aside, obviously during the workday, 30, 40 minutes to take this survey, because it is pretty intensive. But yeah, we get lots of good feedback. And then through that, for an example, it takes it down to a micro level. So we talk about the macro culture, but then we get micro cultures, and we're able to look at different departments or different divisions. From a macro level, everything said that our customer service score was really strong. But then when we look down to it at a micro level, there's one particular team, is actually our accounting team, where customer service scored really low. We're like, wow, why is that? And so as we dove into that and we got together with the accounting team, was because they saw their customer as being our residents who live in our apartment, so they're distant and far off. And so it gave us an opportunity to teach and coach them that, no, really, your customer is the property manager that you're serving, giving them good reports and data so that they can make better decisions. Or it's, making sure that you're giving good data information to our investors so they can make better informed decisions. So that's really who your customer is. It isn't our residents, although they are important. And it was like this light bulb went off for our accounting team, and also they understood really who their customer was more.
That's cool. Yeah, because I was just going to ask you, was there an insight or anything you got from doing something like that? And it really was just redirecting a miscommunication or a view that was off of a little bit. Really cool. And I love how you said it was third party, because I've participated in a ton of surveys and stuff like that in my career throughout my life. And we used to always joke on the employee engagement surveys, like it would be like, this is so anonymous. And then it's like, what's your title? What region are you from? You know, that's like, okay, so we're not going to get real data with this coming through anyway. So it's like, what's the point? But if you're going to do it right, like you truly want it to be anonymous and for people not to be afraid and have that psychological safety to really give you the feedback. And that's a piece on the leadership side that's reading the data, is being able to take that feedback in a space where you're not getting defensive. You're operating from wisdom and non-judgment and curiosity as you're reading through the feedback that comes through, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, again, I'm very fortunate to work with some really great leaders in our organization. And so it makes it, what do I say, somewhat easier. I know not every organization has that support from a leadership standpoint, but here we do. And so, yeah, we get that feedback, and then immediately, we do it at the end of the year. So then at the first of the year, we're quick to communicate to the entire organization. Here's the top 3 things we took away from the survey. We heard this, we heard this, we heard this. And as a result, for, 2025, these are the 3 areas we're really going to focus on. And so now, as we get to the end of 2025, we're going to get the new results. We're going to see, hey, did we move the needle in those 3 areas? So it's not just enough, again, to get the data, but then you have to turn around and communicate back to the team. We heard you, and these are the action steps we're going to take.
Yeah, because sometimes you take that survey and you're just like, why did I even take that? I didn't hear anything back. Or just like, okay, we'll click the button because But the other piece too that's coming up for me as you're sharing that is, you said, here are our top 3 things. Here's what we're going to focus on. We're going to, focus on this for the year, report back how we did. I think it's also important to say, hey, we heard you on this issue. Here's kind of where we're at with this. We aren't able to do anything about it at this point. I'm just, making something up right now. But I think that shows a lot of transparency too, because I've also seen leaders sort of want to give their teams the answer they're looking for. And then there's empty promises that get sent out. And then there's ultimately disappointment. So I think being really candid about what can be done, what can't be done, here's where we are. I think there might be some initial disappointment, but overall there's that respect for the honesty that comes forward too.
Transparency and authenticity, those are things we value as well. And we think that's important. So,
yeah, you've done this work for over 2 decades. We talk a lot about the future of work on Create Magic at Work and what that could be. What do you sense but can't yet see for the future of companies and organizations surrounding culture?
Oh, I love that question. I was sitting around a table with other culture champions not too long ago, and we were talking about the future. And we all agreed that 2020 was really a turning point in lots of different ways, where all of a sudden people started really thinking about what really matters, in the workplace. And then I really credit this new generation of the workforce where, having been in it as long as I have, there was a time where, hey, the mindset was you're at work, whatever happened at home, you leave at home, you cross this threshold, you're focused on work. And then, that's just not reality, and that's not healthy. And going back to this new generation that's coming into the workforce, they realize that's not a healthy place to be. And so I've always been in the mindset of this kind of more holistic approach anyway, where, your personal is going to bleed into your professional and your professional is going to bleed into your personal. You can't compartmentalize that easily. And so I think the future is people realizing more and more that we're not compartmentalized people, and we bring a lot of complexity, and we need to, I would never like this work-life balance phrase because it's very transactional, and I'm more into the work-life harmony. How can I live my life in such a way, and how can we help our team members and our organization live their lives in such a way that, they can show up and be authentic at work so they can be their best self. And so then when they go home, they can also, be their best self at home and be present. It's really about being present where you're at. So as I think about that, we talked about how 2020 helped shape that. We talked about how this new generation in the workforce is really pushing us to actually, I think, be better and to create that, that magic at work, to use your phrase.
Todd, I love what you just said, because on Create Magic at Work, we have talked a lot about how work-life balance is a myth. We've also introduced maybe different ways of naming it. Work-life integration was one, which I wasn't necessarily a fan of. Work-life harmony sounds like such a creative, positive visualization for all of us to utilize that language. I love that. That's the first I've heard anybody say it in that way, work-life harmony. The other thing too is that really aligns with our SQ teachings, our spiritual intelligence teachings, aligning with the ebb and flow of life. So work-life balance is a myth. It's skill 21, aligning with the ebb and flow of life. And I think that leads right into, if you skill build in that area, it will help you have more work-life harmony. So thank you for bringing that to all of our ears. On that note, I'm going to pull a card from the Create Magic at Work journal prompt card deck for everyone listening. We're going to get a message for everyone. This is for you, and for Todd, for you as well, and for me, message for the week to inspire us. Let's see what we get. This card is coming out. Okay. Ooh. We got innovation. I'm already not wanting to read the card and be like, we need to be innovative with culture. Okay, so here's the affirmation on the card, which is funny because you were just doing this. If anyone ever sees the video, you were writing. And when I said innovation, the affirmation is, I honor imaginative ideas by writing them down. So that was awesome. You were doing it as I pulled the card. Let me give you a question from the card that you can answer, advice to the listeners and all of us. What ideas for progress have we been overlooking? So I'm curious, Todd, from your lens, do you think that there's something overall that we're overlooking as far as progress goes with company culture? Or with companies that are trying to have a really positive, impactful culture?
I think we make things too complex. And, every organization wants to grow. They've got numbers, they've got, goals, they've got projects that they want to, keep moving the needle on. And I think if we don't pause and take some time to think about how we can spend our resources on keeping things more simple, because somebody once says that growth builds complexity and complexity kills growth. So if we want to continue to grow, we have to really fight to be simple. And so I think maybe we might be overlooking the idea of trying to keep things as simple as possible. When we can think and be innovative on how can we keep things simple, then we're going to be able to move faster. We're going to be able to adjust quicker. We're going to be able to pivot. And so we really, I think, need to kind of kill complexity and really think about keeping things simple.
What's coming up for me when you're sharing that is keeping it simple with connection. I go back to the story we were talking about where you were like, well, if you have an agenda when you walk in and you've got to read the room, you've got to notice if somebody needs a real conversation with you for help. That to me is keeping it simple.
It's bringing the humanness to it. Yeah. If I walk in and I have an agenda to go talk to one of my direct report, and I can just read oh, something's not right here. I'm just going to put that aside and say, hey, what's happening? I feel like there might be something going on. Would you be comfortable sharing what's going on? And next thing you know, hearing a story about how her mother's in the hospital, and it's like, okay, well, everything else is pale in comparison to the fact that your mother's in the hospital. Let's talk about that. Let's forget about this stuff over there. And so then you build that relational, currency, if you will. And you've got that connectedness. So when you care, and this is again, somebody else's saying, but when you can care deeply and care personally about people, then later on, you can be able to challenge directly in some other areas as far as their work.
Yeah. Todd, if people want to connect with you and learn more about your work, how can they connect with you?
Well, best way is probably on LinkedIn. There's only one of me on LinkedIn. It's such a unique last name. So it's just simply, if you do a search for Todd Wuestenberg and the last name is spelled Wuestenberg, you can find me that way. Love to connect on LinkedIn. One of the things I like to do is every Thursday I post something called Thankful Thursday. And it's just a way for me to look back across my week. And in fact, I'm pretty sure, Amy, you will make my Thankful Thursday this Thursday because I love giving shout outs to the new connection. So yeah, that's probably the best way to find me is on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Yeah. And every episode with Create Magic at Work goes out in the Create Magic at Work weekly newsletter. So this will be the theme of the week when this episode airs. And in the show notes, we'll have your LinkedIn link. But connect with Todd on LinkedIn. And Todd, we really appreciate your time. You're literally there doing the work. And so thank you for that. And thank you for bringing some magic to all the listeners today.
Well, thank you, Amy. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing as well. And it was fun connecting with you. Thank you so much.
I want to thank each and every one of you for coming back every week to listen to a new episode of Create Magic at Work and really helping to support and advocate for healthy leaders, workplaces, and lives for all of us. If you want any information on how to connect with me, click on the link in the show notes. You'll get access to all of the social media links for Create Magic at Work. Stay following along for more amazing episodes where we help you improve productivity and profitability in the workplace and decrease stress. Sending magic to everyone, and see you next time.